Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to this meeting of the IJB. Okay, I know that understanding orders 5.6 and 4.8.1, this meeting has been held by remote participation due to current restrictions and the impact on public attendance at meetings of the IJB. While the public is excluded from attendance at this meeting under the terms of the Coronavirus Scotland Act 2020, members of local media are in attendance via remote link. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be published online for public access after the meeting. Can all participants online please switch off their cameras and mute microphones when not speaking. If you do need to speak on any point, please use the raise hand function in Teams or indicate your wish to speak by signalling on your camera or taking your microphone off mute. Officers are reminded to follow the protocols that have been separately issued with regard to their participation. And before we start the meeting, can I please ask the committee officer to do a roll call for members to indicate that they are present?
Good afternoon. Mr. Carroll.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Campbell.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Fraser.
Hello there.
Ms. Haswell.
Good afternoon.
Mrs. MacDonald.
Present.
Mr. McGregor.
Present.
And the non-voting members, Mr. Chittick.
Present.
Mr. Williamson.
Present.
Ms. Morgan.
Present.
I have apologies from Dr. Evans. Mr. Armitage.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Watson.
Present.
Mr. Sandilands. I don't believe Mr. Sandilands is in attendance. And Ms. Gens.
Present.
Mrs. Tulloch.
Present.
Mrs. Adamson.
Present.
Mr. Guyan.
Present.
Dr. Laidlaw. I don't believe Dr. Laidlaw has attended as yet. Ms. Campbell.
Present.
And Ms. McFarlane.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecil. Do we have any apologies?
Just Dr. Evans.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest, members? No, if any come up in the course of the meeting, just let me know. Okay, thank you. We will move on then to agenda item 1, which is the final audited accounts 2020-2021, and Carl is going to present on that.
Thanks, Chair. This is the audited IJB annual accounts for 2021, and this account has just been to the audit committee before this meeting, and they were very pleased with the accounts and had no issues. The draft accounts were presented to IJB Audit Committee and IJB on the 24th of June and then passed to audit. So the audit process is now complete, and Deloitte's audit report is up next on the agenda. There's only been slight amendments to the figures and the narrative during the audit process, but as far as the financial adjustment went, that didn't change the bottom line, and the narrative changes were purely cosmetic. The audit report, which is up next, will touch on these changes. So as far as the accounts goes, they consist of the management commentary, that's pages 11 to 25, and that includes a bit about the background to IJB operations. There's a performance overview, and that's aligned to the IJB annual performance report. There's an operational review, and that kind of details the significant achievements during the year and performance against various KPIs, and it also stresses the impact of COVID-19 throughout the year. There's the financial review, and that shows the key transactions in the table on page 18 of your packs. That, if you look at the first line, that's the annual budget of just over 56 million. The expenditure on IJB delegated services was 56.6 million. So the IJB services finished the year with 230,000 deficit. However, the underspend on the SIC arm of the budget was returned, and the NHS made an additional contribution to balance their arm of the budget, but they also passed across some unspent specific funding allocations at year end, which meant the IJB finished the year with a 1.2 million surplus, and that will be carried forward in the IJB General Reserve, giving a total balance of 2.198 in the reserve at the end of the year. If we move on to the annual governance statement, that's on pages 26 to 30. That just explains the IJB's governance arrangements and the effectiveness of its internal control system. There's a few minor issues reported here, but they don't affect the overall audit opinion. And this issue is clearly documented in the action plan on page 30. The independent auditor's report is on pages 35 to 38, and that gives Deloitte's opinion. And you'll be happy to hear that's a clean audit opinion, and you'll hear more about this in the audit report, which is up next. The remainder of the document is just the technical accounting entries, such as the primary financial statements and the notes to the accounts. So I'm not going to go through that in any detail. And we're asking the IJB to approve the accounts, that's Appendix 1, and to note the management representation letter in Appendix 2. I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Thanks very much, Carol. Okay, I'll open this up for questions. Any questions in the room? No? Any online? Okay, no questions, Carol. Thank you very much. I know this was at the audit committee earlier on today, so maybe ask Chair of the audit committee to just give us an update on how that went at audit.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I suppose this is something that we've had an unprecedented year to deal with. So really pleased with the report, and obviously you'll get the report from the auditors after this. But I think a lot of credence should go to the people who have been involved in getting all this done through the NHS and SIC finance department, and Carl, who probably doesn't want to take the credit, but done a great job considering where people have had to work and adjustments had to have been made through the process. So thanks very much to you all.
Okay, thanks very much, Lincoln. Has anybody else got any comments on this one? No, nothing in the room, nothing online. Okay, I'd just like to express my thanks, Carl, for you and the rest of the team involved in finance. I know it's no mean feat to get these annual accounts done every year, so thank you once again. And there's no surprises in this, as we know. We do face challenges, but actually what we are doing is the right thing. So I think we're all happy with that. So we're being asked to approve the audited annual accounts at 1.2A and note the management representation letter. Are we all happy to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it need to be moved, Liesl?
I can take Mr. Carroll and Ms. Harswell's approval there as moving and seconding.
That's super. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
Okay. Move on to agenda item 2, which is the annual audit report 2021-22. And I believe Grant from Deloitte is going to present this one.
Thanks, Chair. So the annual audit report covers purely the financial statements audit. We don't go into any detail of the wider audit dimensions, given the fact that this was presented in June, so we've not done any further work on that since then. So as Carol alluded to, the audit was completed under challenging circumstances, with the continuation of remote working and the full impact of COVID-19 being felt within the financial statements. In addition to this, there were new auditing standards to deal with, which also resulted in us having to reduce our materiality level, etc. I'll now take you on to the actual report, and if we go to page 4, where we can see our conclusion. So based on the audit work performed, we'll be issuing an unmodified opinion, and we have only identified one financial misstatement, which I will come to later on as we move through the report. If I take you to page 7, where our quality indicators are, So these are 7 areas where management and the finance team can impact on the quality and efficiency of the audit. You can see that all of these are green, and this is exceptional in the current circumstances, and it shouldn't, as I mentioned this in the audit committee, it shouldn't be seen as just a tick the box exercise, given the fact that a number of the clients that we audit only have 1 or 2 indicators which are green. So on that, it really should be taken as an endorsement of the IJB's approach to readiness for and engagement with the audit process. If we look at the annual accounts themselves, they were a very good document, really user-friendly, and included a lot of information in an engaging manner. So the use of tables, pictures and signposting throughout was really welcomed by us as an audit team. The document is an honest and fair reflection of the achievements of the IJB and also the challenges which are faced by the IJB. If we now go to page 9, which details our significant risks for the audit. So these haven't changed since our planning report in March. They are in relation to the completeness and accuracy of income and management override of controls. And through our testing and different procedures performed, there were no issues identified in relation to either of these. Carol mentioned just about the one misstatement which we identified, and this was just in relation to additional COVID-19 funding provided by NHS Shetland to the IJB, which within the draft accounts hadn't initially been recognised but was subsequently corrected for by management. The identification of this misstatement was in no way detrimental to the quality of accounts, which, as I've mentioned, were a very high quality document. We've also made no recommendations as a result from the annual accounts, which is a testament to all involved in preparing the accounts for us to audit. And finally, I'd just like to touch on a stat from Audit Scotland. So Audit Scotland published their annual review of quality of public audit in Scotland early in the summer, which is available on their website. In summary, the targeted or the level of quality met by all auditors as an average was 67%. And when we compared Deloitte's performance against this, we got basically achieved 100%. So hopefully that is gives you some assurance as to the quality of audit service which is being provided to the IJB. And on that note, I'll open up to any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Grant. Okay, any questions, members? Yeah, Robbie?
As always, Chair, I have to apologise for comment rather than question, but I had my day in court with questions.
Well, you can say, if it's comment, you can save it till we get to comments.
Okay.
Or is it a question?
I'll wait.
Okay. Do we have any questions? No? You can go straight in for comment then, Robbie.
Thank you very much. I had my day in court at the audit committee meeting earlier on. It would be remiss of me not to comment that Grant and indirectly Carol are hiding their lights under a bushel. Page 63, these traffic light reportings for the quality indicators is to say the least commendable. So my congratulations to both of you.
Thanks very much, Robbie. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I particularly like being at meetings when you have auditors saying things like exceptional, high quality document, those in testament to everyone involved. Those are the things we want to hear. And we hear those things because we're really lucky to have such good staff who are working across all areas. And I know that working and pulling the audit together is a lot of work from everybody. So I appreciate that. And Deloitte from doing their bit as well. So thank you all. Do we have any further comments? No? Okay, so we're being asked to... I wonder if, Lincoln, if you want to just let us know how this went at the audit committee.
Thanks, Chair. I was just about to put my hand up. No, echoing what everybody else is. I mean, everything's green in terms of quality indicators, which is good at any time, but exceptional at this time. So, and we certainly passed on our thanks to Deloitte and to Carl and his team yet again. A lot of work gone in and a really good report, so that's really positive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're just being asked to note the annual audit report. Are we all happy to note? Yeah.
Yep.
Note.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we move on to agenda item 3, which is the planning and performance update, and Elizabeth is going to present on that one.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the planning and performance update for the first quarter of 2021, so it's up to June. What we agreed at the last quarter meeting was that we would remove some of the indicators that weren't properly focused on outcomes, but that requires a little bit of work behind the scenes, a sort of technical amendment to the report, and that hasn't happened yet. So what you've got this time is the full report, but we are determined for the next time to have removed those additional indicators. But if you could just not notice them for this quarter, that would be helpful. So what we have is organisational wide indicators. We have the annual operational plan indicators, measurements against the health and wellbeing outcomes, and the national integration performance indicators. Then we have complaints record from local authority and NHS Shetland. And to complete the pack, we have 3 case studies this time, which I hope that members will find helpful in bringing to life and illustrating some of the work that we're involved in. So I think that's all I wanted to draw your attention to, but obviously very happy to take questions and comments, and it may well be that other people are better placed to answer any questions that come through.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. Yeah, I appreciate there's a wide range of different areas in here, so the questions might be better for many different people, but I'm sure Brian will point me in the right direction. I'll open it up for questions, members. I've got a couple, so I'll maybe just kick off while people put their hands up. My first one is kind of a general one. So page 82. It talks about the delivery of the strategic plan relies on partnership working between all our partner organisations. I just wonder, I know I've asked about this before, but just how effective are the partnership meetings at the moment, and is it doing what it should do? I'm not sure who wants to take that one.
So is that in the corporate priorities you're looking at? Is that part of on the partnership as in with
Yeah.
So I would say the relationships are developing quite well actually as we move through, and we've got certain areas of work where actually that's drawing us together even closer. So National Care Service consultation is one. Obviously that's very high on the radar, but there's other work streams that we're taking forward in collaboration to realise that strategic plan. So some of that maybe first responder work with Scottish Ambulance Service and Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We've linked in with the third sector, voluntary sector, with liaison groups to look at community-led support, which is obviously realising some of that community kind of focus in the strategic plan as well. So I think there has been good partnership working and good kind of reinforcement of those relationships to make that work come to fruition. That will realise that those outcomes of the strategic plan. I think that's what you sort of alluded to.
Thanks. Do you want to come in, Elizabeth?
Yes, I think I'm just reiterating what Brian has just said. I don't think there's a single day where we don't work with our partners in some form or other, and probably it becomes so routine that we don't notice it or perhaps celebrate it as much as we should do. I do think that certainly within the health and social care field, we are using our programme management office. Well, they are very, very helpfully helping us to clarify roles, I think, and the role of partnership working and looking at how we use the collaboration with our partners better. So I do think that you will maybe start to see outcomes more clearly in the future, or that's my hope at least.
Okay, thank you. I suppose what I'm kind of meaning is when we look at so we have our partnership plan and then we have the meetings that come from that. We don't really hear back on what progress is made at those meetings, on what the outcomes are from those meetings and who's working on what field, I suppose. So it would maybe be nice to formalise some of the feedback from those meetings a little bit into the IJB so we can see what is actually happening. Does that make sense? My other question might be better for maybe Carl or Brian. On state aid, page 82, one of our aims is to achieve a sustainable financial position by 2023. Now, this feels like a very unrealistic target to have. Is there a point where we start to recognise that actually our services cost more at the moment, they cost more because there's higher demand, and actually can we move that so that isn't a target that's not going to be achieved? If we recognise that's not going to be achieved, do we have to keep that in there? Do you want to come in, Brian?
I'll maybe say, just reflecting on the previous two reports from the committee, you know, year by year, it seems that we're balancing, with the input from our partners financially, but achieving that kind of longer term sustainable financial position. I think you're absolutely, right in saying, is it realistic by 2023? I think from the financial reports that the Chief Financial Officer puts forward, that isn't realistic at the moment. So it maybe is something we take away and have a look at how we reframe that moving forward. I know there has been work looking at longer term sustainability, primarily within primary care, but that's now expanding into community health and care. So I think there is good work that's being done to maybe redress that, but I think within that timeline it would be unrealistic. But maybe Carl will want to come in and just maybe add in some around that.
Thanks, Brian. Carl, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to really echo what Brian says, I think we should change that because it's not realistic to think we can reach a sustainable financial position by 2023. I mean, we do rely somewhat on the funding partners reaching their own sustainable positions, and I think we're all aware of the council situation and the NHS as well as finding it difficult to make that recurrent savings. So we do need to look at this and revise it, and also what happens with this national care service. That might be different funding models again that we need to look at, but I agree this needs to be looked at because it's not realistic.
Thanks very much. I've got one last question and then I'll be quiet. Page 90, so one of the indicators is on psychological therapies, and it says in it that additional resources are currently being sought by the mobilisation plan. Now, it's all very well having additional resources, but if you can't recruit to those resources, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank for it. So I suppose I just don't see that as necessarily being the answer, and I just wonder, there's a question in there, how do we deal with that?
I'm happy to start, and maybe the head of service for mental health might want to come in as well. So I think traditionally where we've gone out to recruit for the same kind of professional group, that hasn't worked, and we have sort of struggled to get a sustainable kind of workforce. With the new consultant coming in, what we have done is reviewed under the improvement plan that skill set and that multidisciplinary team kind of approach for psychological therapy. So, for example, adding a clinical assistant kind of psychologist in there, or an occupational therapist. That's something we've not necessarily gone out before to recruit, and they are out for recruitment at the moment. So I think there is possibly a different perspective in who we're recruiting and we're just looking at that under the recovery plan. We do acknowledge that some of that funding is short-term under remobilisation, but if we're finding that there is real kind of service benefit, then we'd obviously be looking to how we mainstream that funding moving forward. If we're finding that those skill sets and different professional groups are really having a positive effect on the service. And I think it's the right thing to do at the moment. There's a lot of multidisciplinary kind of approaches to healthcare at the moment, and this is just another subset of that. So I think hopefully we will be trying to recruit a different workforce kind of group, which may add interest in coming to Shetland work. But I think we'll just have to wait and see. But I totally acknowledge the point that the workforce kind of ability to recruit is not often matched with the money that's available there, and that then opens up that sustainability gap and has that problem of access problems as well. So yeah.
Thanks very much, Brian. Karen, did you want to come in?
Hi, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to kind of add on a little bit extra to what Brian was saying. So I'm going to be taking part in one of the mental health leads meeting around contingency planning for workforce, because this is a regional and a national issue around recruitment difficulties across mental health. But Brian's right, we are looking at a different skill mix. We're also looking at trainee posts that we've never had within psychology before. We've got a few individuals who've taken their training so far for psychology, but then can't find that additional training that they need, and we would be supported by a different funding package to look at if we can be successful with trainee posts. But part of our contingency planning and what we've started is some group work. So people who are appropriate to be involved for some group therapy that's started. So they're single gendered groups, and we've started one. They run for 10 to 12 weeks, and then we'll evaluate and we'll begin another one. So that you'll start to see some of the longer waits coming down if people who are on the waiting list are appropriate for those groups. So we're trying a number of different avenues to look at the longer waits. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karen. And I have no doubt that you and your team are doing everything possible that you can. It's not, and it's nobody's fault that we have recruitment challenges. Okay, if anybody else got questions, because I will stop now. No, I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'll open it up for comment. Anybody have any comments? Robin.
Very brief comment. I was thrilled to bits to hear Elizabeth's comment. Maybe I didn't get the words down right, but this is just it. Not a single day passes that we don't work together. That's music to my ears. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Robin. Jane?
Thank you. Just commenting on the case studies, and thank you to those that have actually contributed those to this report, because I think that is where we want to be with the IJB, to see that journey, outcomes over a journey. I think they're particularly linking to the indicators is really important. On our recovery plan or a remobilisation plan, we did actually stipulate that we were looking at health literacy and improving health literacy, and I think these 3 case studies actually show that that's at the heart, and I think that we're meeting that, where we're explaining far clearer and also thinking beyond the discharge or beyond the actual coming into the service. So I would commend that approach and look forward to seeing more. Elizabeth, you asked for suggestions for other areas. Are you wanting to take that off meeting, or are you wanting some just now? I'm happy to just send them to you within an email, because I think there is preventative work and partnership work that we would like to see coming through the IJB in this manner. So thank you for making these changes, and particular thank you for those that contributed the case studies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jane. I've got John next.
Thanks, Emma. I'm afraid it's not to contribute anything constructive to the meeting. I was going to say this time, but that's perhaps the case every time. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave. So my apologies, and I'll catch up with what else comes out of the meeting later today. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
And Lincoln.
Thanks, Chair. Just echoing really what Jane was saying about the case studies, and allows us to see the reality for what a lot of people is living in Shetland and the challenges that they face, and certainly one from the mental health team and one from the recovery hub. Is a story I hear often from young people I support in my other roles, so it's certainly something that I'm really aware of, and again, uncertainty around accommodation and housing for people who are in crisis is a huge issue throughout the UK and Scotland. So looking at how we can do things better in terms of supporting people, I think is with housing and securing accommodation, I think there's things we need to maybe look at in the wider picture, and again, that's that partnership working, coming together as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you have your hand up, Lister?
Yes, it was just, if it's helpful, we're in the process of developing a programme of case studies so that we do make sure that we're covering a wide range throughout the year and then in the annual report. So I wondered if once we've got that list, we should share it, and then people can add to it, or yes, I suppose add to it, or say if they want things that aren't already on the list, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be helpful. Thanks very much, because I can see nodding heads. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, any further comments? No? Yeah, I just want to highlight what Jane said, and thanks. I really think that case studies do bring things to life, and it's far better than looking at data and looking at some of these rather not that interesting to read indicators that we sometimes have, where the case studies are people's lives, and it does really bring home the reality of what we're doing here. We're making decisions that hopefully will improve the outcomes for people in our community, because that's what matters, and that's why we're all here today. So I would like to thank you for making those changes, and it's definitely the right way to go. So we've been asked to...
Emma, can I make one more comment as well on that?
Yeah, you want to come in, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that, echo that point about the case studies, and just also point out that so many of the things that contribute to the quality of our healthcare and social support systems in Shetland cannot really be measured quantitatively, and I think it's really important that we recognise the limitations of using data and numbers to measure our effectiveness of our health services when so many of the indicators cannot be measured. And I wonder whether we might use that thought process in deciding which of the measures we continue to use in terms of how we judge things.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not sure what we've been asked to do here. We've just been asked to note this. Comment on any issues?
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay, are we all content with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Lister. Okay, we move on to agenda item 4, which is Community Health and Social Care Draft Interim Workforce Plan, and Denise is going to do this one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Denise Bell, and I'm the Executive Manager for Human Resources for Shetland Islands Council. I'm presenting this report on behalf of Lorraine Allenson, who is the HR Services Manager for NHS Shetland, and myself, and Lorraine is also here today. We've worked together on elements of this plan. However, it should be acknowledged that the template and information requested is NHS based and has been developed in response to a request for information by the Scottish Government to address the challenges created by COVID-19 with very little notice to prepare that. And on that basis, I would like to thank Lorraine for completing the lion's share of the work to produce this interim workforce plan. The plan covers the period from the 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2022 and is based on workforce profile data as at the 31st of March 2021. Workforce profile data is always a snapshot in time. It supports and enables the delivery of the NHS Shetland Remobilisation Plan, and it also reflects information and contributions from the operational management teams across integrated services. The plan describes the support provided to staff during the pandemic, which continues to be a priority, as well as outlining the short-term workforce drivers during the pandemic, as well as the specific medium-term drivers within those services. The Scottish Government feedback on the plan is attached to Appendix 2, and that sets out the positive points as well as other points that they wish to be addressed where possible when we develop the 3-year plan. We are especially pleased that the Scottish Government has described the plan as an excellent example of an integrated plan. It's certainly not easy to achieve that, given the differences in structures and processes across the partners, and in particular around workforce profile information. The priority for us now is to prepare the 3-year workforce plan for health and social care, which will cover the period April 22 to March 25. And that is to be completed and published by the 31st of March 2022. And that will again be structured using a national NHS template that also provides and requires specific workforce profile projections. Workforce planning is very well embedded within the NHS, far less so in local government, and so this coming together and producing integrated workforce plans is proving to be a challenge for NHS boards and integrated joint boards across Scotland. We will align the development of this 3-year plan with the IJB strategic plan and the health and social care operational planning processes, working closely with our management teams. Wraparound planning meetings took place earlier this year, led by the IJB Chief Officer, and now those were set up for integrated services, which were both a mix of operational frontline as well as the corporate support services, and that has set the scene for how we'll work together on developing and delivering our plans. This joint workforce plan will also reflect and complement the Council's workforce plan, which of course addresses workforce issues across the wider Council services and workforce recruitment and retention challenges facing Shetland. Lorraine and I are both happy to answer any questions that you may have about the plan. Obviously, I am best placed to respond to questions relating to the social care workforce, and clearly Lorraine is far better placed to respond to any questions about the NHS-based services. No doubt Brian will also be able to help. We're also keen to hear the points that you may wish us to consider when we are to begin developing the 3-year plan. And Lorraine and I have a meeting in our diary to meet in a couple of weeks to begin the work on that. So thank you very much. And as I said, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Denise. Okay, any questions on this one? Anybody? Jane.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. My question is there any plans to look at the third sector and voluntary sector within, because the IJB's certainly looking to have far more commissioned services coming into our direction. So it makes sense to look at Shetland as a whole. So are there any plans to do that?
When we come together, and at the moment we haven't begun on that 3-year plan, and we've had there have been plans in the past, and so there would certainly need to be cognizance taken of that, because they're contributing to service delivery. So I suppose the short answer to your question would be yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And the graph of the demographics will play into that as well, because it will be a different demographic for perhaps different service delivery points. So thank you for that answer. That's positive. Thank you.
And Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Denise. I can see that the NHS staff have been consulted on it in the documents, and the council staff have not been quite engaged to the same level. So I just want to make sure that in the future, going forward with the 3-year plan, the council staff is engaged. I have, in the week since we had the report, I have made some further inquiries with members who actually have said that some of the proposals for community care are missing to address the real issues when it comes to recruitment and retention. So can I suggest that we take that offline and discuss all those things, make sure that we get them right? Thank you.
Yeah, I would. Thank you, Suzanne. And I would just to come back on that, if I may, Chair, a couple of things just to say that absolutely the engagement with the council's workforce in developing the 3-year plan, and you'll be aware that we've exchanged some communication about the Joint Staff Forum, which is where I would expect this to be discussed and the consultation take place. And certainly, I suppose, and on your other point around the specific recruitment issues and challenges around work social care in particular, it's important to bear in mind that this plan is for this year only, up to March 22. And so absolutely, there's a great deal of plan and activity for social care workforce going beyond that, and that will certainly be a feature of the 3-year plan.
That's fine. Thanks.
Thanks. A couple of questions from me, but there might be a better place Brian might end up. One of them, though, is, maybe not a question that anybody can answer, it's probably a question for the Scottish Government, but why come with the requirement to do a 3-year workforce plan when they're also potentially coming with a national care service which will change the workforce? It seems like an ask of an awful lot of work for people to then potentially have to change that again. So I appreciate that's probably not a question you can answer. But my other kind of question that might be more answerable is, we spend a lot of time looking at the challenges we have within our workforce, and this report is very, very detailed. There's a huge amount of detail in here, and it really highlights the challenges, the difficulties we have, and the areas that are really struggling with ageing workforce, and the challenges that are going to keep going forward. I suppose, at what point do we start to have the conversations and recognise that we can't continue to run services the way we do? And we have to do them differently because we don't have the people. So instead of always being on this, we must recruit more of this, there has to come a point where we say, we can't recruit more of these people. We have to do things differently to use our staff in better ways. And I'm hoping that in this 3-year plan, we will see more development of that actually we can't keep doing the same thing because we don't have the people to do that, and things will have to change. And Jane, do you want to come in on that one?
Yes, I noting Suzanne's points, and I will pick up with her separately if she thinks we've been too brief in terms of recruitment for community care resources staff. But just on the point you're making, Chair, there is work going on apace, actually, in terms of continuing to shift the balance of care from hospital to residential to care at home. That this is going to be discussed in some detail in relation to the National Care Service workshops, but as you will have seen from other documentation, the number of our reliance on residential beds has dropped quite considerably. We've delivered more than we said we were going to deliver in terms of reducing reliance on residential placements, and as a result, care at home has grown significantly. Because of the pandemic, and I think the exemplary work that was going on in community care resources to keep people safe across residential care at home and daycare, we probably haven't been as good about trumpeting what we're doing to keep our own improvement plans and improvement initiatives going. But currently there is work going ahead looking at the number of the mismatch between the revenue budget for care at home and what would actually be required to make that service not just sustainable but resilient to cope with any of the challenges that come at short notice. But that will be reported to the IJB in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Do you want to come in and talk?
No, I think Jane's said probably what I was going to say about it's about how we're using our workforce resource differently, and that is a really good example of care at home and how that is a lot more efficient way, an effective way of providing care for the resource that we've got. And we've also touched in the previous report about skill mix and the change of skill mix within the workforce, and using the workforce slightly differently to get the different kind of outcomes. It is also a way maybe of sustaining that workforce moving forward.
That's super. Thanks very much. Lincoln?
Thanks, Chair. Just when you're talking about care at home, Jane, I did mention at the audit meeting that anticipatory care plans went up from 1,150 odd to 6,400, I think. So that's a fairly significant increase. And I think you're right. So that there's a lot of information about those things in any reports. I think that's need to be able to share with the board more robustly, I guess, because that's a lot of people doing a lot of work. And at very challenging times. Something I've spoken about a lot in NHS board meetings is modern apprenticeships, which the SIC have really done really well, I think, in recent years of looking at building the workforce. I think we struggle with in terms of finances to develop modern apprenticeships in some areas. But again, Chair, about the ageing workforce and losing skilled people to early retirement and things like that. We want to be able to develop young people into those roles before we lose the skills of the people that are there now. So I think that's quite a key thing for us moving forward. I think nearly a quarter of the NHS workforce are heading towards retirement age, but it's a very full report, and Lorraine, if you've done the most of the work, that's brilliant. It fairly covers things, I think, everything I had thought of in terms of where workforce is looking at. I think one of the challenges as well is an area like mental health officers has been a real challenge. And I think, if I'm perfectly honest, a lot of that is around the contracts that are there aren't something that social workers are, looking to take on, because there's an awful lot of commitment and very little financial gain for them in terms of the extra work and commitments they'll need to make. So I think that's something for roles like that, we really need to look at how we develop those posts and make them more attractive to people to come into in the future. And a lot of professions, there's a challenge because there's better opportunities in other places. So again, we spoke in audit about the locum costs and how we can offer something that people will want to take up and move to Shetland. And at the moment, I think that's the $1 million question, literally almost. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Jane. Did you want to come in on that?
Yes, just in response to what Lincoln is saying, I think anticipatory care plans are a good indicator that people are empowered to make active choices about their care for the future. And we know in community care resources that what they mostly want to choose is home. We have done a lot of work around improving the information that we're able to share in terms of complexity of needs of our clients, but also the accuracy of that information, and hopefully that will be coming through to the IJB on a more regular basis now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lorraine?
Okay, so I just wanted to add the last year in the interim plan was really focused on recovery. So the reshaping will follow, which is the intention of the three-year plan. So the engagement was very much focused around the operational groups with the heads of service. So some of the wraparound meetings that Brian has led will focus on that, and the follow-ups around the operational plans the workforce will align to that. So that would be helpful. But thank you for your feedback. That's I think it's been difficult for most services. So some are in different places still. But I think that the three-year plan will focus on a way forward, certainly around workforce.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lorraine. I appreciate you didn't have very long at all to pull all this together. So I think it's a very impressive plan based on that. Denise?
Thank you, Chair. It's just also to iterate on the back of Lincoln's comments that there is a significant piece of work going on at the moment with HR and social work and social care staff to review the job descriptions of social care workers and of social workers, mental health officers. And what we also have to understand is there's other social workers that do specific roles, such as practice educators, that we also need to consider. So we are trying to do our best at the moment to ensure that we have a job description and a self-evaluation of the new job descriptions that will be attractive to encourage people to come to Sheffield. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, Robin?
Thank you very much, Chair. You'd be disappointed if I didn't jump into the pharmacy section. I'm a great worrier about risk. Can I ask when the prolonged vacancy in the Director of Pharmacy role is going to be filled, and note the risk of capacity of other staff and acting up whilst delivering the core roles, reduces the capacity for senior strategic leadership within pharmacy service during a period of high risk and a major system-wide change. I have several other questions which I'll roll in together. I'm pleased to see that community pharmacy seem to enjoy regular pharmacist manager staffing. The reason I don't have any here is I had the responsibility for many years to make sure pharmacies down south were staffed with managers, so I'm delighted that community pharmacy doesn't have that problem in Shetland. But to be serious, I'm concerned about the difficulty of recruiting staff, and I'll roll this out into everything now. So my question is, yet again, can innovative means be found to attract people to various roles in Shetland? Is it financial incentives that are needed? I noticed a pharmacy chain down south is offering big incentives for people to commit to working for a particular period. Forgive me, I've no knowledge of HR in both the council and the NHS where these things are allowed, but certainly, as I've said before, attractive housing is particularly in the mid-market rental section is something we need to address to get people to come. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I really would appreciate an answer on this Director of Pharmacy role.
I'll maybe just come to your second point first, and then maybe Mary McFarlane will come in specifically about the Director of Pharmacy. It was just a point I was going to make was that there have been some work done by an action group to look at workforce and really linking in with the SIC HR team to look at some of those innovative ways that we've discussed. And I know there has been work streams looking at relocation and pay and grading of jobs and things like that as well. So they are all work streams that are ongoing at the minute. On the health board side as well, the PMO's taken over some of the aspects of the workforce development as well, which will be looking at some of these aspects as well to try and be as innovative as possible, one step ahead, looking at some of the conversations that we've had over the past to look at how we can entice people to come. And I know also the Chief Finance Officer has also been engaged with people like HMRC to have a look at those kind of maybe constraints that benefits in kind, for example, is something that has been a constraint in enticing people to come up to some of the roles and jobs that we have up here. So I think there are a variety of work streams that are on the go, both at the operational and strategic level to try and just look at some of these innovative ways and try and get them into operationalising them quite quickly. So, but I'll maybe let Mary answer, Chair, if that's okay, maybe on the Director of Pharmacy.
Yeah, Mary, do you want to come in on that point?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the Director of Pharmacy post has now been vacant for about 8 months. It's Chris Nicholson, the previous Director of Pharmacy, was in post for about 20 years, and we've had to do a significant amount of work to get it to a point where it was possible to go back out to advert with the job. The job has changed hugely in the last 20 years. So that's why we've had to do the work that has been ongoing. But we are almost now at a point where we can advertise the post, and we would hope to do that very soon. If I can respond also to the other comments around recruitment of staff within pharmacy. We have been successful recently in recruiting another technician to primary care. So we now have 3 technicians working in primary care, which has really helped to strengthen our ability to manage the work in GP practice. We expect to hold interviews for pharmacist post for primary care also within the next 2 weeks, and we hope to appoint to that post as well. So we're hoping to be in a much better position in primary care. The hospital side is still very challenging due to sick leave and also maternity cover. It's doubly challenging because of the vaccine ask that continues to be very significant with the COVID boosters and the flu and so on. So on the hospital side, we are still really challenged, particularly with one of our pharmacists going on maternity leave again at the end of the year. So that will be difficult for us, alongside the implementation of HEPMA, which will come in the early months of the new year. Then we will have to work very hard and hope to get some cover to help us during that period. Community pharmacy has also experienced stability in the last year or two, and which has been really good. But I think one of the shops at the moment is without a pharmacist on a long-term basis, and we would really hope that that can be recruited too. So I hope that helps.
Thanks very much. Come back, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mary, for that very full answer. In general, if you permit me to make just a brief comment, I hope any remark I made with regard to recruitment is taken as being a constructive comment. It's not meant to be critical. I'm trying to assist with every bone in my body to find ways, and it's not meant to be critical of either officers in the NHS or SIC. Just desperately trying to find a solution. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Denise, did you have your hand up?
I did briefly. Oh, did you mean Denise Bell or Denise Morgan? Sorry.
Denise Bell, I had you listed first on my list.
I did briefly, but I think I was going to just actually describe some of the work that Brian referred to reassure Robbie that there is a great deal of work going on at the moment exploring different approaches to recruitment in order to be able to make the most of that. And certainly we're just working our way through what we learned through the Fair Isle head teacher post and another thing. So we'll be working more closely with NB Communications and our own communications team for the advertising some social care posts. We're also exploring offering some relocation packages for social care worker posts, which is something that we haven't needed to do in the past, but had a meeting just yesterday with Jane Best and with Claire Scott about that and how we can manage that in order to be able to help with some of these recruitment pressures. So we're exploring quite a number of different ways. I think it's really important for us to do that on the basis of knowledge that we had about the barriers, rather than us kind of leaping into making some assumptions about why there might be difficulties. We certainly know through the consultation that has been taking place for the National Care Service that certainly in terms of social care workers, salary levels in Shetland are very competitive when it comes to comparing to salary levels south. So however, we are reaching the point where we're employing virtually everybody that we could possibly employ when it comes to social care here in Shetland. It's a limited pool. Just to reassure IJB members as well that we have had a discussion about the impact of Brexit and the changes in immigration rules, and that has had little or no impact on us in terms of recruitment. That many of our staff that are from out with the UK are very, have been settled in Shetland for a long time. They were very well supported for anyone that needed to apply for settled status, and certainly the feedback from the senior managers is that that's not directly an issue for us. However, what that may have had an impact on nationally as well as locally is whether that's reducing the pool of people that might be looking for work in social care, because they're actually they're looking at other roles that might have previously been occupied by people that are no longer here in the UK. So I suppose it's just to highlight the fact that there's a lot of activity going on. So I'd just like to reassure particularly Councillor McGregor on that point. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Denise. Denise Morgan, did you have your hand up? I had you next on my list, but we've maybe moved past the bit you had your hand up in.
No, sorry, it was a legacy hand.
That's okay. Got Lincoln next for the question.
I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment, but I'll try and phrase it a question. Denise, obviously the Developing Young Workforce team are now up and running, and is that something that the council are looking at in terms of professions for young people moving forward as well? I think in NHS we've certainly spoken about looking at how we can engage people from Shetland into looking at professions that they can get opportunities for in Shetland when they come back. So looking, I guess, encouraging our young people to look at medicine, look at OT, physio, that kind of things. The schools are also able to offer success students opportunities to go and do work, or certainly career placements, I suppose, while they're in school as well, which allows them to sort of look at what those roles look like. So it's certainly something that's available, I think, and could be worked on. And again, it's working with other organisations to try and lower the level of work that can be done by your team and Brian's team. But it's certainly, obviously, there's been lots of issues with being able to engage anybody, but it's certainly something that schools are really keen to engage with as well, and really give young people the opportunity to know what's out there for them and what the opportunities are that could be available in the future, in the longer term. Thanks.
Okay. There was a question. I couldn't quite hear you very well. It's not a great line you're on, Lincoln. Is there anything you want to come back on that, Denise?
Well, I suppose I would just say that certainly in terms of what's already in the council's workforce plan, and Lorraine Allenson and I have already discussed it, and it will be a feature in this joint workforce plan, is about working in partnership with DYW, Developing Scotland's Young Workforce, and other employability schemes. The council is certainly involved in the MCR pathways and project search and so on. And in addition to that, something that will certainly help the council in terms of its recruitment of modern apprenticeships is with the consolidation of the Scottish Local Government Living Wage, that once that's implemented, then that will also see an increase in the hourly rate paid to apprentices, which I'm sure will be useful in attracting more young people. But yes, it's certainly something that Lorraine and I have identified as a key feature of the plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Denise. Sorry, Mary, I think you've maybe had your hand up for a while and I missed it. Apologies.
No, it's okay, no problem. I just wanted to come back in terms of the innovation, in terms of what we can do with posts, particularly in pharmacy. My role at the moment also covers Orkney. And in Orkney, we've been able to recruit a pharmacist to work remotely for a primary care post. This wasn't something that I'd considered in relation to Shetland at all, but a colleague in Orkney suggested it, and we were actually very successful because we had a number of applicants willing to work remotely, and we've now secured 2 remote pharmacists for primary care. So it's something that we would consider for Shetland in the future, although it's less than ideal in terms of people being able to identify with what is happening actually on the ground in Shetland. It is a way of getting some of the work done that can be done on a remote basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have any further? Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's just in response to the questions that have been coming. And I just wanted to say also, in relation to the consolidation of the apprenticeship salary, we are hopeful that that might actually attract mature applicants, as well as people returning to work, those that may have financial commitments that couldn't commit to an apprenticeship scheme where it was a lesser rate of pay, but we are hopeful that that might be a positive way forward to attract more mature apprentices, as they're saying. I also wanted to raise that we now have a memorandum of understanding with Caledonian University and Napier College in Edinburgh in relation to offering placement to third-year students for learning disability nursing, and we're hopeful that that will get underway either in November or in the early new year. So that's another very positive step forward in developing our workforce and possible people who would be interested in coming to live and work in Shetland. Thank you.
That is really positive. Jane, you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, it's just Denise touched a bit on it there. We have underrepresentation of disabled people within working both within the NHS and SIC, and just making sure that part of the workforce planning also looks at job descriptions and actually applications where it's compounding the discrimination that people with a disability have in terms of actually getting into the workforce. I know Project Search but also looking to expand that area of work will be really important. And the second point is about the post-retirement, so making sure that Shetland as a whole retains those skills and providing that sort of lead up to retirement, but looking from an IJB perspective to feed into that and looking at our partnership working with the third sector and voluntary sector and making sure that we capture as many of the skills and still hold that for the objectives of the IJB. So, but I think it is actually the job descriptions that and breaking down jobs into different components. I think that's a really important part of the workforce development for disabled people.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, clearly a job description has to just focus on what the duties are. It doesn't describe how those duties are carried out. And there are clearly, and there's a requirement to make sure that that the essential requirements are absolutely those essential requirements, we are required. I was going to just say that we also have to report, both the NHS and the council produce the mainstreaming equality report. We do our statutory equality reporting, and that also has an action plan. So that will also identify specific actions in order to actually increase the diversity of the workforce. So what we may do in the workforce plan is refer to some of that rather than repeat things and duplicate things. It's actually just looking to see, well, are those things reflected in there? Are they sufficient for the workforce planning purposes? And then it may well be that we need to do some more specific things in order, specifically around the kind of recruitment aspects of that. It is a real challenge around that recruitment. We certainly we have our accreditation that I think the NHS is too. We're accredited as promoting disability and ensuring people can work flexibly and make reasonable adjustments in order to enable them to be able to carry out that work. And that's something that we have to be re-accredited for. I think it's every 3 years now. Yeah, there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into that. But you're quite right. Absolutely, there is no denying that across the whole of Scotland, it needs to do better, and it's no different in Shetland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Claire, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just reiterate what Jane and Denise have said there in relation to Project Search. Project Search ran as a pilot project for 3 years from late 2018 and was very heavily impacted by the COVID pandemic in relation to the model and structure is very much around offering work placements in the workplace so that people with learning disability and autism can gain the necessary skills in a trumped up way. Because of the majority shift to working at home and distancing all of the matters in relation to the pandemic, as we say, that was very heavily impacted, and we actually didn't take any students in the year 2021. We're actually now back on track again to restart that Project Search model. Part of that is definitely to support young people and people with disability to gain the skills for employment. I have to say that the other part of it, possibly 50% of it, is working with colleagues in workplaces where there can be a learning process and development of opportunity for a more diverse workforce. So we're looking forward to that project model getting up and going later in the year. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, Jen?
I was wondering if, it'd be worthwhile looking at the charitable trust in respect to, sponsorship, bursaries, for our kids to try and help them and make them, help make it easier for them to go to uni, get their qualifications and come back to Shetland. I just wondered if that had ever been explored, using.
I'm not sure whether, do you mean, are we talking about young people that are not employed, or so people at school, you mean?
I'm looking at, people at school. We go there and we look at, when we speak to the kids at school about, future employment, etc., etc. I mean, if we had some form of bursary scheme or sponsorship scheme, I mean, I'm just saying that this charitable trust maybe could provide some of the money for it. It might, help kids and, to say, right, and I'll go and be a doctor, I'll go and be a pharmacist, etc., etc. Where we're looking at retaining our kids in Shetland. What we don't want them is to go to university and disappear. So therefore, if we have some sort of hold on them, even if it's a case of, right, you know, once you be qualified and everything else, because you've had the sponsorship or bursary, you know, you have to work here for a couple of years or 3 years, etc., etc. I'm just saying, is it well looking at?
Thanks for that, Jim. I suppose we're talking about a different organisation that nobody is here to represent, so it's very difficult to make comment.
I'm just,
answer.
yeah, I'm just saying, would it be worthwhile, you know, you approaching them even?
Certainly, I think it was one of those work streams we could take away to have a look at bursaries. We have discussed it in the past, and part of the problem is we can't actually put that hold on individuals to come back and, you know, despite even giving them a sponsorship or a bursary, you know, we can't actually get them to sign like a pre-contract or anything like that. Sounds very football that. But we can't actually, you know, manage that. So there is some element of risk and financial risk involved in that. So happy to take it away and reinvestigate what's in the art of the possible, as we are looking at all kind of sort of innovative ways of emboldening the workforce.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, that's fine. As I say, it was just an idea.
Yeah. No, all ideas are always welcome, I think. Okay, do we have any further questions on this paper? No, I think we've given it a good, I think it's very difficult when you're looking at recruitment and workforce to not go off on different areas because it covers so many different things. So thank you very much, Denise and Lorraine, for that report. I think we all would agree that our workforce is our biggest asset. So we need to ensure that we have them in the right places at the right time to do the right roles. And I know some of my questioning was maybe might be seen as slightly negative, but I do think we talk a lot about shifting the balance of care, and we do lots of different things, but sometimes I think we're not very good at making that shift. And I appreciate that at the moment we are dealing with lots of other things, which means we can't maybe progress things as quickly as we would have done. But I think we have to be mindful when we're planning where we want our workforce, that we have to look at where people want to be. And as we've established, most people want to remain in their home. I know most people I know would like to remain in their home. And to do that, that does mean that you have to have a bigger workforce that work in the community. So I do hope that we get to that stage where we do have a plan that has the right people in the right place for our community's best interests. But do we have any further comments on this? Yeah, go ahead, Owen.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for that report. Very interesting and really good discussion afterwards. I want to speak partly as somebody who's been successfully recruited to NHS Shetland as a consultant in the last year, and also somebody who's been recruited to work in New Zealand and in South Africa in the government sector in the past. One of my experiences of the kind of effectiveness behind a recruitment team has been not just about the job descriptions and the finance in terms of salary and other relocation grants and things like that, but also the human relationship that has formed between me and the potential place where I'm going to. And I know, Brian, we had a number of discussions in your previous role prior to me coming to Shetland, and a lot of our recruitees will be people that you know, maybe on training courses which will eventually enable them to graduate, come and work in Shetland when they've reached a certain qualification. When I worked in South Africa, there was actually an NGO that worked for the South African government to work to sort of headhunt doctors to go and work in the government sector in South Africa. And the New Zealand government workforce system was incredibly effective. As soon as I filled that form online saying that I might be interested in working in New Zealand, I had friendly approaches from HR managers from all different hospitals in New Zealand saying, oh, come and work in our hospital, we've got all these wonderful things and here's where you might live and all these things. So I think maybe if we could have people in Shetland who could really develop a human friendly based relationship with potential graduates, that would be incredibly effective, alongside of course the job descriptions, making sure that we're making ourselves welcome from that perspective, and of course money is important, but not just in salaries, but also perhaps money in terms of helping people to find housing. I heard a really heartwarming story about somebody who was selling a house in the Highlands to a young teacher, and this young teacher sort of wasn't able to put a very high bid on their house, but the person selling realised that was a valuable key worker who was possibly going to move into their house, and they got the house ahead of somebody who was a retiree from the south of England who could pay a lot more. And I wonder whether there might be some system in which our HR recruitment team might be able to sort of intervene on some level in terms of helping people to meet their basic needs as workers in Shetland, not just in terms of salary. So just sort of a few comments from my personal experience.
Yes, thank you very much. Any further comments? No, I'm not seeing anybody, so we're being asked to note the draft joint interim workbook plan, note formal feedback and advice of the, and I think we have done all of those. Are we happy with that? Yes? Yeah. I've not heard anybody say no, so we'll take that as a yes. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the IJB business programme and IJB action tracker, and Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. This is the routine presentation of the business programme for IJB. The only thing I would like to point out is the obviously the special IJB we're having on the 20th of October to discuss our response to the National Care Service consultation, and also to highlight the additional IJB we put into the 9th of November to try and push forward some more business through the agenda management there. The only thing to put on the business that's still be scheduled, yesterday I'd heard that the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership annual report should be submitted by the 14th of October. So again, we should have that coming through the IJB on the 9th of November. Also, just to note in the action tracker, there have been some actions completed from particularly from the last meeting. And I'll take any questions, Chair. Board has it.
Okay, thanks very much. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Good to hear that we're hearing an update from the drugs and alcohol team. I wanted to suggest to that the IJB might look specifically at a significant widening of the remit of the drugs and alcohol team in terms of specifically setting up a heroin-assisted treatment clinic for Shetland. This is an area that I have sort of personal interest in, and I should also make a declaration of interest that I've campaigned on this politically with the Scottish Green Party as well, from a non-NHS perspective. But I think we all recognise that across Scotland, and including in Shetland, we do have a significant issue with the health burden, the social burden, and the criminal justice burden of people who use drugs, including heroin, and there is a significant increasing need to cater and provide care for this extremely vulnerable group of people. And looking at evidence from heroin-assisted treatment clinic pilots in both in Middlesbrough and Glasgow and internationally in Vancouver and in Switzerland, there's a great deal of extremely positive evidence that this treatment modality yields significant improved results for the recovery and optimization of healthcare for these people. And I'd like to suggest that IJB explores looking into this as a potential service that we might bring to Shetland. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done to look at the details, but I wondered whether we could look at that. Maybe.
Certainly, we had a drugs and alcohol partnership meeting yesterday, which the IJB is represented by myself as the chief officer. So I wonder if that's a better place to locate that kind of conversation. Certainly, yesterday we were discussing about ways forward and what activity would be supportive to those that is supported by the recovery hub, for example, or the actual drugs and alcohol partnership as well, and the work that they're doing. So maybe it's something we could have an offline conversation with maybe the partnership manager as well, Wendy McConaughey, to see how we could locate that work in some future kind of conversations.
Okay. Yeah,
I'd like to come in and support Alex. I wrote to Angela Constance this morning, the Minister for Drug Policy, advising her that Alex and I intended to bring this matter up this afternoon. Central government has to have some input into this. The Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs in 2016 suggested that central government funding should be provided to support HAT for patients for whom other forms of opioid substitution treatment have not been effective. So, I feel very, very strongly. I know what Brian says about taking this to another forum, but I think this could also be an IJB matter. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, thanks. Do you want to come back in, Brian?
Just to acknowledge the point, again, it may be a conversation to have out with to see what a way forward would be, where again the conversation would be best located, because I think when we're working in partnership with other agencies to provide that support, then we could support that conversation being located, as I say, within that partnership.
Okay.
Oh, Wendy, come in.
Hi, thanks. It was just to say that I'd be more than happy to speak with Alex and Robbie about this, and that I agree with Brian that possibly the place for the initial conversations is at the Alcohol and Drug Partnership meetings. Any funding streams that are coming from Scottish Government around this area have to be approved by the Alcohol and Drug Partnership in the first instance. So I think the initial conversations with that partnership might be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds like a plan. Thank you, Wendy. Okay. Do we have any further questions on the business programme or action tracker? No. Do we have any comments on the business programme or action tracker? Other than the fact the list has been there's still seems to be quite a number of things to be scheduled, and we don't seem to have a huge amount of meetings left to hold that within. Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just to help a little bit with that, I did mention it at Audit Committee earlier this afternoon. There has been correspondence with the Minister in relation to the timing of the codes of conduct coming out from the Scottish Parliament once they've been approved. One will be for the Councillors' Code of Conduct, but then there'll also be the model scheme for devolved public bodies. And the clear indication at the moment is that both will be available in December in terms of their implementation dates. That being the case, I'm hopeful that we may have more up-to-date information, perhaps even ahead of your meeting in November. And if that's the case, then I'll be reporting directly to you, and that would take one of those items off your list of pending business. But if not, at the very least, I should be able to firm up on the date when it will be considered for the business programme. Thank you.
That's super. Thanks very much, Jan. Okay. So we've got no further comments on that. That concludes our business for today. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance and for your contributions. And we will see you at the workshop tomorrow, and hope you're all ready to attend, because it's very, very important to discuss the potential National Care Service and its implications. So thanks very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.